أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to Islamic Oasis Live. Alhamdulillah, today we have our honored guest, Brother Adnan Khan from the Geopolity. He's the founder of the Geopolity. Today we have a important topic to discuss, which of course is on everybody's mind from the past 2 weeks that we're reaching 1 year of the Gaza genocide. It's been insane. It's been saddening. It's been aggravating to see for 1 year onward, constantly watching on social media the firsthand scenes from the Palestinians themselves that the kind of inhumane brutality that they're experiencing under the occupation. 1 year on, the savagery is still continuing, and the world cannot or will not extend a hand to the people, the Muslims that are living in this area. Of course, the biggest biggest burden and the greatest type of khiyana or backstabbing nature is, of course, from our own brothers and sisters in Islam, the leaders of Muslim nations that have in many ways permitted this to go on. We have a few things that we need to discuss. Inshallah, I think let's begin with first, of course, welcoming Brother Adnan Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Adnan. Welcome back to Islamic Oasis. Inshallah, how are you doing? What are you thinking on? Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, welcome, Sam. It's good to be here. It's been a little while, so it's good to be here again. Unfortunately, it would be better if we were in a better place in the world, but unfortunately, it is what it is.
Yeah, subhanAllah. It's Brother Adnan, we're reaching 1 year of this genocide continuing on. What are the things that you think we really need to understand 1 year on from this genocide?
Mm-hmm. So there's probably quite a few lessons, really. Whenever these sort of events happen, when you have a shock, and events happen or an issue happen of such magnitude, when you come to any anniversary, it's really a time to take stock of what do we now know that we didn't know, what's been confirmed, what's been exposed. So these type of anniversaries, whether it's 1 year or more, is really a good time to take stock of what's going on, where things are, and what do we know now that we didn't know. So, for example, we know now that Israel's propaganda or its information was being a complete failure. People have completely seen through the lies that Israel has been propagating for decades, propagating in the global media, propagating in the West, that they're the victims, that they just want to live in peace, that the surrounding people, they're the extremists, they're the terrorists, they don't want peace. It's all been completely exposed now, to the point now where when Zionists or Israeli officials go on TV, go on news programs or podcasts, even neutral presenters question them and grill them And it's like they've never prepared for the day where they're going to get questioned. So that's been completely exposed. What people are seeing and what they're hearing from Israel is completely different. What the Israelis want is what we're telling you is the reality. And what people are saying is we hear what you're saying, what we're seeing is completely the opposite. What we also now know is our rulers that built their credibility for decades that they support Palestine, all the colorful statements they made, even when they criticize Israel, when it's actually come time to deliver, when it's come to time to step up, they are nowhere to be seen. So I want to single out Erdogan of Turkey, who's built his whole career on the Palestinian issue. Where's he been for the last year? Iran didn't do anything for 6 months until its embassy was attacked in Syria. And then it's now responded with some token gesture, which I'm sure we're going to go into more details about. We now know Jordan hasn't just been neutral, it's been actively helping Israel to target the missile strikes that have come from Iran and Hezbollah. Our rulers have taken a side. Even the rulers who are doing nothing, you've taken a side, because when people are being massacred in front of you, doing nothing is taking a side. And that side is not the side of the Muslims. It's on the other side. We see also now that the West, who for long supported Israel, who for long said they're our ally in the region, they've got massive problems now. Their own people are questioning the support for Israel. In fact, you're seeing massive protests in the capitals in London, in Paris, in Berlin, where people are saying, these are non-Muslims saying to their government, we don't want arms transfers to Israel. We don't want aid to be going to Israel. So probably the main development in the last year is actually being that Israel is now being seen for what it's always been, which is an apartheid nation that has an expansionist agenda. And what that means is the indigenous people, they need to be expelled. And that really is completely open for everyone to see. And Israel now struggling to actually justify this.
Yeah, subhanAllah, it's, let's, on the issue of like the terrible response from the occupiers, from the Israelis in managing, I guess, the media war. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, right? It's amazing to see, and alhamdulillah, it's like, it's really great that the reality of this occupation has been shown across the entire world, literally live streamed through 7 continents, through like all media platforms. Israel spends countless, like so much money for advocacy in in the political sphere, in the public discussion arena, through like advocacy groups on campuses, on uh, in the corporate world. They've had their reach in many places. Yet in this past year, the entire world, people that did not even know anything about Palestine, now they understand the reality of this brutal occupation. How is it like I don't know. I mean, that just has to be said. It's just amazing. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, they can't hide. They've been hiding behind, I mean, to quote Norman Finkelstein, they've been hiding behind the Holocaust. They've been hiding behind that they're the victims and the people around them, they want to swallow them up. And people have seen for what it is. It's not the Palestinians that have a ground force. It's not the Palestinians that have tank regiments. It's not the Palestinians that have an air force. It's not the Palestinians that have medium and long range missiles or 2,000-pound bombs. It's not the Palestinians that have a nuclear weapon. So how on earth are they the aggressors when you're the occupier? And people can see it for what it is. You find every time an Israeli official now is questioned that you're the occupier, what do you think is going to happen? If you take your mind back, I think 2-3 weeks after 7th October happened, the General Secretary of the UN said that, look, we have to look at this in context, which is 50 plus years of occupation has led to this. His point was, don't just look at this in isolation. There's a background to this. And that's what people are seeing now. People are seeing that why did 7th October happen? What led to Gazans to what led them to this sort of actions. I'm sure we've all seen the videos of what happened on the day they carried out attacks and assault. People were kidnapped. Those kidnaps, the people kidnapped, they're now being they're hostages and negotiations are going on. But during that time, Gaza has been reduced to rubble. They've targeted hospitals, mosques, refugee centers. They've displaced them. They tell them from the north to move to the south. When they go to the south, they tell them to move to the border area. They still get bombed. Refugee centers are being bombed. In fact, this is the only war in recent history where proportionally more doctors have died, more children have died, and more women have died. There's no way you can argue we are defending ourselves when just look at the numbers, 42,000. And you're dealing with people here who don't have an army. They don't have a force. These are people, to quote Norman Finkelstein again, these are people in a concentration camp, and they responded.
So let's rewind the clock a bit. Let's go back, a year ago. Of course, the issue of Philistine, it goes back 100 years. But the attempt in the beginning, in that kind of that first month or two, there was a lot of effort done to basically stigmatize and to recontextualize 100 years of oppression into one specific operation. So let's go back and revisit this. About October 7th, this we've seen they had done what they had to do in the state of occupation to to preserve their lives. In many ways, it's been like that for decades, right? The situation was still the same whether it was a year ago or whether it was 20, 30 years ago, etc. However, most of the Muslim world and the Arab world, the international community, whatever, they have left the Palestinians to suffer the ultimate cost themselves, although they could have done something. Regardless, this, the question on some people's minds, and we have to put this to rest, is why would Hamas carry out the assault on October 7th? Why would they conduct this operation knowing there would be a brutal response in retaliation? Let's try to, reassess this, and think about again the motive behind this and the plan for this.
So there's 2 points to this, really. One is we need to understand the context and the history. And the other thing is we need to look at what other options were available to them and why weren't they utilized. So Gaza consists of refugees today. So these are not people who are living happily in an area. These are refugees. These refugees were created because when Israel carried out its war, they call it their liberation war, when they seized territory and expelled the people, many of these went to Gaza. So from 1948, Gaza was under the control of Egypt. In 1967, in the 1967 war, Israel took it over. So from 1967 until 2005, it was under a brutal occupation by the Zionists. And what they did was they even established settlements there in order to expand in the area. Then by the early 2000s, they realized that it's becoming a bit of a problem. They were unable to defeat the people rebelling. They were unable to establish security there. And also they had another problem. From 1967 until 2000, Gaza was part of Israel. And what was going on? The population in Gaza was growing, whilst the population of Israel wasn't growing very much. So there was going to be a problem. If this remains part of Israel, you're going to have to give them citizenship, and the Muslim population will be a significant size in Israel. So they'd made the decision. This is something openly Ariel Sharon and his advisor actually said at the time. What we need to do is leave Gaza. We'll maintain a blockade, but Gaza is a completely separate territory. It's not part of mainland Israel. So they did this in 2005, and that's why in 2006 you had the first election in Gaza. And that election was part of the Abraham Accords, which was that Israel would recognize some sort of Palestinian state where they can have their elections. Hamas won that election, and obviously Israel and the West never accepted it. So what Israel's done at that point was it left Gaza, it deconstructed its settlements, but what they did was then maintain the blockade around the border of Gaza. So what they did, they controlled the border, they controlled what goes in, what comes out, they controlled the telecommunications. It was a prison. You can walk freely in a prison. It's still a prison at the end of it. So what have the Gazas tried to do? They've gone to the international community, they got nothing. They've gone to international institutions, they've got nothing. They've gone to the Muslim rulers, they've got nothing. So what else can they do? What do slaves do to their masters after a period of time? What does any prisoner do to their masters? What did the French do when they were under Nazi occupation? What did the Algerians do when they were under French occupation? What did the people of India do when they were under British occupation? When all the other doors are closed, you give them no rights. This is what you get, unfortunately. So this is the context here. You know, these people didn't just wake up one day and decide, I want to do something. It's after decades of brutal occupation, brutal living, and all the rights have been taken away. So this is really the background to it. This is what's happened. It's like many Americans, you know, why did 9/11 happen? And now they realized that there's a whole context to 9/11. You know, what's America been doing around the world? What's it been doing in the Muslim world? What drives people to do this? And maybe people may not understand this after the first year, but as years go forward, they will realize. And already people are realizing there's something seriously wrong with Israel. Everything they've been told about Israel, what it's trying to do, there's something seriously not right. So that's really the background. That's what drove the people of Gaza to do this.
Yeah, it's like now to look at like the occupation side. So, you know, how would you assess their strategy since then? Like the way that it postures itself, the occupation, it tries to put on a veneer that it is indestructible, that it is equipped with the most advanced weaponry. Its number one ally is the United States, the world superpower, the hegemonic superpower. It is so on and so forth. But we're seeing 1 year on. A very interesting thing is that throughout the past few months, right, the occupation will go into some place in Gaza, in Palestine, and they will say that they have basically ended the resistance in this area. They have dismantled it. Then 1 week pass, and they move on to a new place. When they go to the new place, the place that they said they had dismantled their resistance has reappeared in the form of administration, in the form of some government, in the form of actual operations, resistance operations going on. And then they have to go back and head back into that same place. This has happened many, many, many times throughout the past year. You know, when you look at inside Israeli politics, there were many mass demonstrations, mass protests against Netanyahu's administration. Although it wasn't, you know, it's important to note that these demonstrations were not against like the occupation of Palestine. They were specifically against Netanyahu and how he's handling the operations themselves. But there's a lot of political like discord inside there. So it's a bit of a broad question, but like, how would you say like the Israelis have handled this, like their invasion of Gaza 1 year on?
So for Israel, even if this didn't happen, they've got their long-term agenda. Their long-term agenda is they want to seize the territory, expand, and they don't want to see a Palestinian state. In fact, the Israeli parliament passed a resolution a month ago where they said they don't recognize any Palestinian state in any form. So although this is the American plan and the international plan, there should be two states. As far as the Israelis are concerned, they want to expand. That's why they're building settlements. And many of them have vision beyond even historic Palestine. So even if this didn't happen, you still would have been watching the slow motion expulsion of the people and the slow expansion of Israel. So for them, when they've done this, when 7th October happened, now it's an opportunity. They've now got the cover to speed up what they're trying to achieve. If you take your mind back, on the 6th of October, Netanyahu famously said, it's the most peaceful the region's ever been. Famous last words. Because what was going on? You had the Abraham Accords going on, Saudi Arabia was normalizing, other regional countries were normalizing. The Palestinians weren't even part of the conversation. In fact, Hamas has said one of the driving factors for them to have done 7th of October was the fact that the regional rules were normalizing So they were literally abandoning the Palestinian people.
Mm.
So for Israel, this was an opportunity of a lifetime, really. And that's why you find what they've done is carried out somewhere in between a massacre and a genocide. That's what they've done. So if you look, there's not that many people. It's a 2 million population at most. Israel could actually occupy this, but their plan is we want to make it uninhabitable. We want you people to leave. That's why they're bombing indiscriminately. They're displacing them. They're dropping 200-pound bombs. They're starving them. They're not letting any aid go in. In fact, the State Department has admitted that we have submitted the reports to Anthony Blinken that Israel is even stopping American aid going to the Gazans. They've said this on record. So, there's a whole strategy here. Despite that, the people of Gaza are not leaving. In fact, Israel's view is it's been decades. We're massacring you, we've got you in a concentration camp, just leave. But they're not leaving. So that's why you're finding the massacre area, they leave, and they find that the Muslims come back. They find the Palestinians come back. They find Hamas comes back. So Israel's got a massive problem. And as this has gone on for a year, Israel needs constant resupply. It needs American ordnance. It needs weapons. It needs arms. It needs bullets. So, and the Israeli army, which we can discuss, is not designed for a high intensity, long battle. It needs a quick result very, very quickly. And that's why Netanyahu is constantly asked, what's your day after plan? His day after plan is, we make it uninhabitable, people leave. That's why he said at the beginning, why don't the Gazans just go to Egypt? Why don't you go into the desert? Like, you're not our problem. If you love your Muslims in your neighborhood, you go to them. So they've got a massive problem here. So they've done two things here. A year's gone by, Israel's not any safer, it's not stable, neither is it secure after a whole year, right? At the same time, they've been exposed what they're really up to. Right? Everybody can see that. Everybody can see the number of people you're killing. 42,000 plus people have died. At least over half of that is women and children. You cannot argue women and children are Hamas members, right? And Hamas probably don't even have 40,000 members. That's why when you quote how many people have died, the Israeli argument here is, well, these are Hamas figures. Okay, where's your figures? You got no figures. Well, and funny enough, Hamas figures in past conflicts, Israel's accepted. Israel's own statistics were the same. So Israel's got a big problem. They're losing the information war, and they're not winning the battlefield war. And it reminds me of America and Afghanistan and Iraq. They kept quoting numbers, we're turning a corner. As the years went on, nobody could see victory. There's nothing Netanyahu could do today that will show you Israel's won. America took down Saddam's statue, look, we've won. America took over Kabul, look, we've won. Right? There's nothing Netanyahu could do. And if Netanyahu says, look, I've turned into a rubble, that won't look good for him. If victories I've turned into a rubble, the genocide case at The Hague will be even more stronger. So this has always been, that's why it's very important here. Even if this didn't happen, Israel's going in one direction, which is we're taking over the whole territory and more. What they've done is they've been able to speed it up in the last year, and they've got the cover of 7th of October. So they will keep using 7th of October for years. This is the largest number of Jews that have died since the Holocaust. Even though what they're doing, the number of people died in the last year is what they're affected to do every year. The media obviously just doesn't give it attention. So they've got a massive problem going forward.
Yeah, it's like it's that seems like it's a genocide. The idea is to make this whole place unlivable, so that there is no so that they don't see a future for the Muslims, for the Palestinians in this area. It's interesting. You said basically this past year, in a lot of ways, it's it's not that different from what they were planning to do already. It's just it was done in a shorter amount of time. So there's a question I have. When they were planning when Hamas was planning the Tufan al-Aqsa operation, we heard some statements from at least a spokesperson, Abu Ubaidah, where he was asking some of the Arab and the Muslim leaders to support them in this operation. Of course, they've left them out to dry, and they had to, they were left to fend for themselves. So, how do you think, like, uh, how have they been, like, operating, like, by themselves? Like, what has their strategy been in the months that followed after October 7th? Has it, like, changed and developed as the process went on, as the genocide continued? Like, in the beginning, they were more hopeful that perhaps some other nation would intervene on their behalf. Um, and now they've kind of shifted their plan for the future. Can you give us, like, a bit of a rundown of this?
Hmm. So it looks as though, looking back at the last year, Hamas actually prepared to be hung out to dry.
Mm,
They probably calculated that despite the help they get from Iran, a little bit from Egypt and Turkey, when it comes to it, they're probably not going to give him any. In fact, Ismail Haniyeh, after 2 weeks, he went to Iran after October 7th. And the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei said to him, "But you didn't inform us about this. Don't expect any help
yeah,
from us." Hassan Nasrallah, when he was alive, he said to them that unless this expands from Gaza, we ain't getting involved.
yeah.
They hung him out to dry. Yeah. Um, interesting. If Hezbollah had opened up a front a year ago, they would have split the Israeli army. The Israeli army would have had to fight on two fronts, which would have weakened their war in Gaza.
Mm,
Hezbollah didn't do that, and now the war's come to their doorstep. And obviously, we've seen what's happened in the last month or so. They've been completely decimated, right? And now the war, I mean, we're in this really weird scenario at the moment where Israel's saying it's going to attack Iran. They've had a phone call with the American administration, they're going to attack Iran. They're actually putting out some of the things they're considering, and we're waiting for them to carry out the attack. I mean, it's a really weird scenario that we're in. We're just waiting to see where this is going to go. So what Hamas did is they obviously carried out the attack. And just want to put this on record, on January this year, Hamas published a document, their political bureau, called The Narrative. You can find it online. And
mm,
in there, they explain why they did what they did. They give their justifications. And a lot of it's really the historical stuff. Yeah. Their plan here was that they wanted to take hostages, both civilian and military, and then use them to get Palestinian hostages or people kidnapped freed. That was basically what was going on. A lot of this gets lost in the propaganda. That was their plan.
mm,
Now, it didn't all go according to plan, right? And for example, they didn't know about the Nova Festival, the music festival. So a large concentration of people. I mean, the fact that there's a concert going on into a concentration camp, that's probably a discussion for another time. But they didn't know about that. So you got a large concentration of people, and they were quite shocked when that actually happened. The other thing is they were surprised how quickly Israel was caught on the back foot. Because what they did, they broke out from Gaza from different locations. And when they targeted the bases, they also at the same time targeted the towns. So the Israeli military personnel couldn't defend the towns for the first couple of hours. So because
mm,
they were caught on the back foot. We also now know that Israel did have intelligence of this operation, right? But they didn't take it seriously. So the Americans had told them a year before that we've got intelligence, Hamas is planning something. They just laughed at the Americans, the Israeli leadership, like, are you serious? You think Hamas can pull this off? A year and a half ago, the head of Mossad actually presented the intelligence to the military and the political leadership. And they all concluded Hamas doesn't have the capability to carry this out. The Egyptians warned them 2 weeks before something's going down. But the worst intelligence failure was Israel has spotters in the villages looking at Gaza. So these are women, men. They just keep an eye out. If there's any movement of people, anything funny, report up the chain of command. So these women reported it, but they weren't taken seriously. So when they did attack, they were caught on the back foot. So what Hamas achieved according to their agenda was they took 350 hostages. If they didn't get any hostages, really they've not achieved anything. And they've been negotiated. So there's already been, I think, 2 waves of hostage negotiations. And Israel's actually killed more hostages than they've actually saved at the moment. That's the
mm.
scenario we're
Yep.
in. And Israel was caught so badly that we now know that they initiated the Hannibal Doctrine,
Yep.
which
I was
is
about to
a
say
dead
that.
which is a dead Israeli is better than a captured Israeli. That's basically what the Hannibal Doctrine is. They'll kill their own people because Obviously, they're going to have to free people in any hostage negotiations. So what Hezbollah's done since October 7th is they've basically started the guerrilla war, which is if you're going to come and invade Gaza, bring it on. So what you do in a guerrilla warfare is you don't fight your enemy in front. What you do is you carry out strikes, you go for the supply lines, and you make it hell for them. So this was the
Sorry, you
Taliban
mean
strategy.
Hamas or Hezbollah?
Hamas, sorry.
Hamas, yeah.
In Gaza. The Hamas strategy has purely been after that, fine, you come into Gaza and we're going to carry out a guerrilla war. So Israel has banned the reporting of military deaths. It doesn't actually permit most media to even go into Gaza. A lot of the information we have about Gaza has come out from their own reporting, Israeli channels, and also soldiers have been posting on social media what they're up to, which isn't a pretty sight, what they've been up to. So yeah, so Hamas, look, Hamas is a guerrilla organization. So they have light arms, and their advantage is that they're fewer in number, so they can surprise you. They don't have military systems. They don't have weapon systems. They don't have tanks. They don't have artillery. They don't have an air force. So they're limited in what they can actually do. So, going back to your question, why would you carry out October 7th when you have little and knowing that Israel's going to respond brutally? Well, my question is, what do you do then? The international community has abandoned you. The surrounding rulers have abandoned you. International institutes have abandoned you. Peaceful protests, you get killed. So what else can you do?
The right of return protest years back.
Exactly, the right of return. So what do? You're going to, people don't become independent by throwing roses. I mean, I'll give you an example. The Zionists that came to Palestine from 1918 onwards, how did they establish Israel? Was it by giving flowers and peaceful protests? It was through violence. It was through terrorism. It was through the expulsion of the indigenous people.
Yep.
So those are really a lot of the background factors that led to this.
There's like one thing that I found interesting too is like I believe they had developed Hamas had developed like some type of system where they could basically, if I remember correctly, it was like building at least the smaller. They're only working with small arms and like mortar shells, right? But for what they are using, right, to fight against the tanks and the drones that are being sent by the occupation and all these other things, they devised like some system of management that they can build their like small arms, like snipers, for example, or put together mortar shells or things like this. So it seems like they were like they did kind of prepare in that respect.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the that's it that they have in facing an occupation, because like you were saying, they had requested help from other nations that actually have these like a proper military, and they have like political power, but they did not expect them to actually help them out, which they didn't.
Look, Hamas recognized that the surrounding countries, they support Palestine for their own personal agenda. If you want to be a ruler that gets credibility amongst your people supporting Palestine, what you do. Saudis have done that historically. Iran has done that. Turkey's done that. Jordan, Egypt have done that. But they recognize that when it comes to their moment of need, don't expect any help from them. So they've tried to prepare for that as much as they can, right? And that's why they knew there's going to be deaths when they do this operation. But this is what happens when you're oppressed. When you're oppressed, you will fight back. You'll fight back with what you have, right? So obviously what the Israelis do, they completely malign everything they did on the day. They say that you were targeting civilians, you mutilated, you killed 40, you beheaded 40 babies. They're trying to malign everything they're doing, right? And what they want is where you just look at the day only. So famously, Piers Morgan always says, do you condemn what Hamas did on the day? And everyone's saying now that you can't actually put this all down to that one day. Because what was going on the 6th, on the 5th, on the 4th of October? It's not just a one-day thing. And, the Zionists are getting very frustrated now because None of the arguments are sticking now. People just don't believe them. And it's very simple. What people are seeing in Gaza is not what they're hearing from Israel. They hear what Israel's saying, but effectively they're saying, I hear what you're saying. What I'm seeing is the complete opposite. What I'm seeing is the genocide.
Mm. And
So,
there's a
Israel's got a problem is you're not winning on the battlefield, or you're not doing anything on the battlefield that shows you've won. But more importantly, losing the propaganda war has long-term implications. Because Israel's justification is based on a lot of arguments which aren't entirely correct. And they've been very successful in this for decades. Now we've turned a corner on that completely. In fact, now, if you think about it, people in the West are saying, we don't want unlimited support for Israel. We don't want to be supporting Israel. This is what Israel does. That's a big problem for them in the long run.
Yeah, and it's really like obviously we have the point that it's been going on for a long time, the occupation, but so many of the things that were like of the claims that were said, of the things that happened on October the 7th, that so many people were killed, and this happened, this atrocity happened. A lot of these have been like debunked from like journalists from all backgrounds, but more interestingly, journalists from within Israel itself. They found issue with these claims. Like it was Haaretz, right? Like not like just I think within a few months after October, they had done like an investigation on this. Um, and they found like a lot of issues. The claims that were being said, it's not exactly reliable, most reliable sources that they're getting it from. But they're still promoted by um, the pro-Israeli sources, pro-Israeli camp, and these are the things that are pushed out throughout the world in uh, to make their propaganda. It ended up hurting them more because people were able to kind of poke holes in the narrative. They figure out, or rather, they figured out the holes that were already there. They're just calling it as it is.
Yeah, I think more or less all the October 7th claims have been largely discredited.
Mm.
In fact, you find the Israeli regime officially has stopped using a lot of them. Although they're out there now, and some people keep regurgitating them, they've been discredited from, they targeted civilians. We now know nearly half of the deaths were not civilians, right? Mutilation, there's been a few investigations, and these investigations, Israel refuses the investigators to actually meet the families of people who've had deaths captured people. They've not even allowed them. The 40 babies have been completely debunked. Where's the evidence? Where the 40 babies with no heads? Yeah. Look, don't get me wrong. If that did happen, yeah, it's wrong, and it's not even ordained. It's something that even Islam's against. Yeah. However, surely if it's happened, you would have evidenced it, right? So obviously, what Israel did is they've been caught on the back foot. Netanyahu's built his whole career as I'm the security man. If you want security, you need to vote for me. And on that day, the security completely fell apart. And that's why now Iran did a limited strike on Israel, right? They have to respond because Netanyahu's whole career is built upon I'm the security guy. I'm going to bring you security.
So as we're kind of coming to like to like a latter half of this discussion, you bring up an interesting point. What do you think is going to happen, like, in the months that follow? Like, Israel has already like invaded Lebanon. Um, the strike that happened, like, that the Iranians did against Tel Aviv. Many people were concerned that this would lead to a regional war. And of course, like, Iran and Lebanon before, like, they don't want this to happen. But it's like, I mean, eh, this is like big developments in the region. So what do you see? Like, what are you kind of expecting? What do you think is most likely going to happen in the next few months? Let's just say like
So
in 2-3 months or something. Where
yeah,
do you
so
see it
the
going?
only people, or the only one that wants a regional war is Israel. Nobody else wants a regional war. Hezbollah doesn't want a regional war. Iran doesn't want a regional war. America doesn't want a regional war. Israel is the only one that wants a regional war. Why? Because Israel wants to fulfill its long-held desires of expanding. of taking on its enemies, of dealing with Iran once and for all. If you look at up to now, the war between Israel and Iran have been in the shadows. They target scientists, assassinations. Israel targets Hamas, Hezbollah, tries to infiltrate them. This is how the war's largely been fought between these two countries. Now Israel's got the opportunity and the cover that because Iran attacked them on the 1st of October, they're going to respond. So what Israel wants to do is it wants to cause severe damage. It wants to completely weaken Iran. So that's why you've even heard talk that Israel should target their nuclear program. But the Americans were a bit divided on this issue. What you're hearing from the White House is no, you can respond, but it's got to be proportionate. America doesn't want a regional war. Remember, in any regional war, if you look at the map, Israel is the size of a dot, Iran is humongous. There's no way Israel can go to war without America providing logistics, providing support. And America doesn't need a war. It realizes that Israel looked bad because of October 7th. So it's allowed Israel to do what it wants, but it's still saying you're going too far. You're killing too many civilians. Then Israel targeted the Syrian embassy, the Iranian embassy in Syria. And America said to them, look, you're going too far. But then the Iranians said to America, look, we have to respond. You made us look bad. We have to respond. But the Iranians have been clear. We don't want to. They've said to them that we've attacked you and the job's done now. Unless you attack us again, as far as we're concerned, the matter's over. Even Hezbollah, its strikes on Israel were very limited. They were in the northern areas of Israel, which is a disputed area anyway. So the only one that really wants escalation is actually Israel. Nobody else wants escalation. But Israel is the spoilt child of America. America can't seem to control it. In fact, there seems to be a lot of people in America, in the administration, in the deep state, in Congress, who basically believe they should support Israel 100% in what they're doing. The problem, if you support Israel 100%, Israel will then go and do more than what they should. And that's going to drag America in. And remember, there's a war already going on in Ukraine. And the war's not going well. China is probably watching this and thinking, are we going to get an opportunity when America's busy to target Taiwan? And you've got an election in less than a month's time where the outcome could lead to potential domestic issues. So if you think about it, for America, you need to support Israel's defense because you need that for electoral purposes. The problem is Netanyahu's taking advantage of that. Netanyahu is giving lip service to America, but then he goes too far. So that's a scenario you've really got here. And if Israel goes too far in its attacks, so it attacks the oil infrastructure, it does an assassination campaign, it attacks the nuclear program, Iran will have to respond. And in any response, Israel's going to need America. This is the problem it's got. So really what you've got is Israel's dragging the region to a war. Israel dragging America to a war. And America's trying to deal with this delicately because, Israel is a ally. And also there's many people in America that openly support, the pro-Israeli lobby is huge in America. So this is the challenges you've really got. Now, what's interesting is Israel's deciding what should happen. America seems to look at their plans and try to restrict some of it. Where are the Muslim rulers? If Egypt opened its borders, if Jordan opened its borders, game over. It's completely game over. Now, how can Israel fight Iran when its borders have opened? The country did it. So what Israel's doing is making it more and more difficult for the rulers to stay quiet. In fact, the rulers, if you look at in Jordan, for example, Egypt, they've had to really clamp down on their people. Because people want something to happen. They want to do something. So you've got this, what Israel's doing is digging its own grave. Israel thinks it's being really powerful, it's being really arrogant, it's going to get security. But the action that it's doing is actually leading to bigger problems for itself down the line.
Yeah. So, the Muslim nations in this area, right? Many of them, they're tied up in the American order with the Western order, the current global order that is enabling this brutal occupation and genocide to go on. So have kind of like a different type of question. So, what do you think happens if, like, the American order starts to wane, and due to these different problems that you're naming out here, that it becomes difficult to, or not as beneficial to be part of the American camp in the future? What do you think like would happen with these Muslim nations, with these Arab nations? I mean, it can go in a lot of different ways. Many of these countries, right? They are, of course, not acting in the interests of Islam as greater, uh, uh, as a greater goal for them in the interests of the Ummah. But uh, do you think, what do you expect would happen? Like, if these things become too much for America to uh, maintain this world order, do you think that would? I'm already kind of assuming something in my question, that the problems that are happening right now would lead to decline of the world order as it is right now. Do you see that as a possibility? I guess, before I go into my first question, do you see that as a possibility that these problems that you're listing out could significantly threaten the way things are today?
Oh, definitely. I think America is very quickly now approaching its Berlin Wall moment. So the Soviet Union was this massive empire. And if there's ever an uprising within the empire, the Red Army used to get sent in, right? When the Berlin Wall came down, the Red Army wasn't sent in. And what that showed is Soviet Union is not as powerful as it was. It can't come and maintain the empire. And then within 2 or 3 years, the whole empire collapsed. So if America's created the global architecture, if it's backed certain rulers, and now it's got bigger problems at home that it can't defend some of them, that now means America is no longer the power it used to be. That now means if you're a ruler that depends on America, you better go and fend for yourself, because America's not going to be coming to come and save you. They've got bigger priorities. And I actually believe if the election outcome leads to instability, America's got bigger problems at home than it has to deal with abroad. In fact, a ruler being overthrown in the world may not be a priority for America anymore. And I would say this isn't new. Actually, this has been going on since the Iraq and Afghan adventures, the way they turned out. They consumed America. America didn't plan for 20-year wars. They didn't plan for them. Look at what's happened. At the moment, look at Florida. There's so many question marks over the hurricane. Why can America not deal with this? Why can it not plan for it? That's because most of your budget is going on maintaining the empire. And that's why you see there's a lot of books that compare America with the Roman Empire. In the end, what happened to Rome? Everything was focused and spent on maintaining the empire to the detriment of the people in Rome. And that's what's happening in America at the moment. To maintain the empire, it costs so much that America has to neglect other things. And now people have seen through it. What people are saying is, what's the point of an empire if we can't save our own people? So I think very quickly, actually, America is going to have its Berlin Wall moment. To be honest with you, I think it's actually inevitable. You look at America's debt. Look at America can't win wars for some reason. America can't even control its own creation. America partook in the creation of Israel. America was the one that built into Israel what it is, and now its own spoilt child is rebelling against it, and you can't even keep it on the leash. So you got parts of the world, Latin America, the Middle East, South Asia, who've had enough of America. They've just seen America completely brutalize the region. So the people will have no problem if a ruler goes against America. In fact, they will support a ruler who actually does that. And now you've got options. Because if you leave America's camp, you got other options, which weren't there for the first 20 years of the 21st century. So this is probably the worst thing for America to happen at the time, considering what America's position is. Now, I think the way the American leadership looks at this, they just look at it pragmatically. They look at it very short term. How do we get through this? Let's control Israel. Let's make sure Iran doesn't go too far. But there's underlying issues. The people have got a problem with their rulers. The people are unhappy with the status quo. The people who had hope in America have realized America is no different to their own rulers. So really, the loss of credibility, the soft power, in a way, is much more bigger loss for America than the hard power. The hard power America will eventually lose, but the soft power is the fact that people believed in America. They believed in a global system. They believed the system would work for them if we had the right leaders. And what America's done with Israel, remember, after World War II, all the genocide laws come in place, and they said never again. Today, the genocide is being televised live. And what do they do? Every UN organ has said it's a genocide, has said that the perpetrators need to be arrested. And what has America done? Congress wrote a letter that we will arrest you and your family to the judge in the UN if you implement this. So they're being like the mafia. So what people can see is this is great power, which is we've got this global system, but we're not going to live by it. So that is a bigger problem for America than the physical loss of a war. Because once people lose confidence in you, it's just a matter of time. The whole architecture will crumble, and that's what's going on here. I just never thought its ally, Israel, will be the one who is the final dagger in the American empire. You know, you'd think it's an enemy, another power comes and it wins. What you've actually got is America's crumbling from within because America doesn't stand for everything that's always propagated. The global power's job is to make sure there's not a genocide. What are they doing? They are literally giving the knife to the murderer. That is what they're doing.
Just kind of to wrap up, there's like it's some things I was thinking about because I was listening to a lecture by Dr. Shoaib where he's talking about the thoughts of Ibn Khaldun, where he said like a lifetime of a civilization. A civilization, he said, first off, it has like a lifetime where it begins at a specific point where it has like, a strong kind of asabiya identity that unites people, that brings them together to participate together and eventually achieve political power. And as time goes on, as the generations go on, towards the end of the civilization's life cycle or the state's life cycle, it starts to decline, and the signs of decline appear in it. That like corruption becomes more common in these places. Its morals decay. Its money becomes like less valuable. For example, it inflates its money. It destroys its currency. And he cited these things. He mentioned it within the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specific sunnah that when a nation reaches the end of its time, then these sicknesses start to set into it. And these are the signs of decline. It's not long until after that this state or this civilization will come to its end. Meanwhile, like I was saying, the idea of asabiya, that people have like a group idea, they have a shared identity. This unites them together. He said that this is basically the beginning of a new civilization, of a new like state. This is the ingredient you need to have. This asabiya, this group identity must be tempered with the deen, must be put into line with like the correct idea of justice, the sharia and things like this. And he noted that it's like and kind of different ideas coming in here, but he noted that this type of asabiya, usually you see it with the people that they don't have like a luxurious settled life themselves. This is something when I was listening to that, I thought of like the people of Philistine, and that the situation they're living in is pretty much inhuman conditions that they're being forced to live in. Yet their preservation, their struggle, every single person who decides to stay in their home, decides to not give their land up to an unjust oppressor. This person is showing an incredible amount of like courage, heroism. They have this like solidarity with each other. And the ummah, sincere people from the ummah, they like are there with them in that respect. They connect their struggle as well with the idea of, like, with Islam. And not a second goes by in any of these videos you see where the person does not mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their house is basically destroyed. Their family became shaheed. Still they thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory eventually. But this is like, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for them. Eventually they will return to their homes. Eventually Islam will return in this area. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how these things will end up, what the situation will look like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the situation improves, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants victory to the Muslim, to Islam, and puts these oppressors in check and gives them their due reward. The same people that they thought the world would not see what they're actually doing, what they have been doing for 100 years. Now the whole world sees this, but they never expected that the world would see all of the actions that they do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show them exactly what they're doing. The whole civilization, the whole humanity will see exactly the reality of what they did. They'll see their consequences. But we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants victory to these people, to the Muslims in every single place. Just if you have any last words, Brother Adnan Khan, just as a reminder for us, just as a parting thoughts on 1 year passing since the beginning of this.
I think you probably addressed most of it. I think probably the key thing is that, look, it's quite easy to lose hope. You look, it's just rubble what they've done to Gaza. What they're posting online, it would impact anyone. But they are not doing this and thinking a year's gone by, we're even closer to our goal. They are doing this because they are not safe, they're not stable, and they're not secure despite everything they've done. The biggest problem is the people of Gaza aren't leaving, they're still staying. So they are not, after a whole year, any closer to their objectives that they set out to do. They are not any closer. So despite creating this image that, we're brutal and we're going to get our way, it hasn't been achieved. And really, what's happened in the last year is the truth of the Zionist entities is open for everyone to see. That's what they've done. That's what they've achieved. That's the achievement is what they're really about has become open.
Mm.
And, we should take heed in that. We should take solace in that, because even when we're feeling down, Palestinian people are still fighting and they're still staying there. So we shouldn't be feeling down when they're actually not. So, we're the eyes and the ears of our people over there, over here. So we should continue exposing America, exposing the West, exposing what Israel's doing, expose our rulers for what they're doing, and keep putting forward how it should be. That's our role here for people who are not there. And if they can, under bullets and missiles and white phosphorus, continue doing that, then surely we can do that as well, sitting outside that region, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Adnan Khan, for coming on. Brothers and sisters, please check out, inshallah, the Geopolity. Always, updating the audience, the public, with the current affairs that are going on in the Middle East and the Muslim world, across the world. Please continue, of course. We must continue to support the people of Gaza, people of Palestine, Muslims in all places, with our hands, with our words, with our du'as. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve all of us. Inshallah, we will catch you guys next week on Friday. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر لا 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 لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر. هذا عمر، هذا عمر، كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر. هذا عمر، هذا عمر. لا، لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح. نحن أهل الكفاح، نحن فينا عمر. لا، لا،